A couple of weeks ago, amidst the soft glow of the nightlight that served as our solitary guardian against the darkness, I rolled over to face him. The nightlight, a minuscule beacon in an extensive expanse of ominous shadows, stood as a solitary lighthouse, leading us safely through the enigmatic uncertainty of the night. It fashioned dancing shadows around the room, its soft, delicate beam of light creating a surrealistic tableau of chiaroscuro. Our silent sentinel, it filled our space with a comforting presence, bathing the room in a warm, soothing glow. It was our tiny sun, casting a gentle golden radiance that kept at bay the eerie specters of darkness. Our room, our cocoon of safety, was a secure refuge from the chaotic world outside. An intimate haven exclusively for the two of us, in which the worries of the world melted away, safely tucked away within the gentle, assuring embrace of the night. A sanctuary we had created, a private space where our thoughts could roam freely, unencumbered by the strife of the waking hours. The quietude of the night enveloped us, cocooning us in a soft blanket of peace, a serene silence that was, in itself, profound. It held within it a depth that resonated with the quiet beating of our hearts. It was a silence that whispered tales of solace, of shared secrets and intimate confessions. Our confidant, the night, was our silent witness, quietly bearing testament to the stories we wove and the dreams we dared to share. It was during these fleeting moments, nestled within the serene stillness of the night, that we found a shared solace and understanding. It was then that we explored the intricate labyrinth of our thoughts and emotions, navigating them together, hand in hand. The ambience was perfect for deep, philosophical questions that pushed the boundaries of our minds, that stirred our souls, and provoked intense, thoughtful contemplation. They were questions that delved into the mysteries of life, poked and prodded at the enigma of existence, of mortality, of eternity. Questions that challenged us, that kept us awake late into the night, our minds lost in a maze of complex thoughts. As the silence thickened around us, I chose to ask him his thoughts on the horror genre. The question hung a spectre looming in the silence, casting long, tantalizing shadows of anticipation. A question that sought to delve into the depths of his psyche, to explore his perception and understanding of fear, and his perspective on the dismal and the macabre. Yet his response was lost to the whispers of the night, carried away by the gentle breeze that rustled the curtains at the window. His words vanished, but the question lingered, a persistent thought imprinted in the silence. It echoed in the stillness, reverberated off the walls, weaving itself into the fabric of the night. It was a question that sparked a thought, a catalyst exploration of understanding. It was the kindling to a mind's roaring fire of thought, the nucleus of a deep introspective discussion. My question was a preface, setting the stage for an unfolding discourse. It was a spark that ignited an enlightening conversation about fear, about the unknown, about the spine-tingling thrill elicited by the horror genre. It was a question that paved the way to a world of thought-provoking discussions and introspective revelations. As the night deepened, so did our exploration into the enigma of horror, delving into the intriguing realm of the eerie and the supernatural. With every passing moment, our conversation deepened, our shared journey into the realm of thought and conversation, fueled by the soft glow of the nightlight and the comforting blanket of the night, continued. And thus, our nightly ritual continued, our shared journey into the realm of thought and conversation, fueled by the soft glow of the nightlight and the comforting blanket of the night. Fast forward to last night, a scene straight out of one of those mind-bending horror films we never got around to discussing. It was an ordinary evening with a moonless sky and stars obscured by clouds. The usual humdrum of night was interrupted by unusual silence. The air, heavy with anticipation, hung around like a thick fog, enveloping everything in its path. The world seemed still, holding on to a moment of expectation, a moment that felt both thrilling and unnerving. The darkness that was initially settling had now completely shrouded the world, wrapping it in an impenetrable veil of mystery. The atmosphere was charged with an intense anticipation. a primal energy that was both tangible and elusive. Hidden in the shadows, unseen dangers lurked. The ordinary world was turning into a tableau of intrigue and suspense, stirring a sense of curiosity yet unease. The usual crickets, which would otherwise be chirping, seemed to hold their breath, contributing to the air of expectancy. The night was thick and pregnant with unsaid words and unfulfilled dreams. It was no ordinary night, but one that held promises of dreams. Dreams that would transport him far from the monotony of real life into the impossible, the surreal. Each inhalation of the cold, crisp air felt like he was stepping further away from reality and closer to a world unbound by the constraints of the known. Every tick of the timepiece on the wall brought him closer to the brink of sleep, the state between consciousness and the mysterious world of dreams. His heart pounded in rhythm with the ticking of the clock, a drumbeat that echoed in the quiet room, that mounted with each passing moment as the night cloaked the world in its dark embrace. His mind, once teeming with thoughts, ideas, and memories, was now a stage set for a grand spectacle. The actors of his dreams waited in the wings, ready to perform in the theater of his subconscious. This quiet excitement filled the air, a certain electricity that permeated the fabric of the night. Amidst this suspense, I saw an opportunity. It was the perfect moment to share a piece of wisdom, a nugget of truth that could guide him through the maze-like world of his dreams. This wisdom was profound, akin to the depths of the deepest oceans and the height of the highest peaks. Under the heavy blanket of darkness, when the world was at its quietest, the true significance of this wisdom could be fully realized. Each tick-tock of the clock echoed in the silence like a heartbeat of time itself. Each tick reminded of the transient nature of existence, and with each tock, it reminded of the unending cycle of life and death. Amidst this symphony of life, I shared the nugget of wisdom, its echoes reverberating in the silence, seeping into his dreams, ready to guide him through the labyrinth of his subconscious. The words seemed to hang in the air, suspended in the stillness. The profound wisdom was no longer just words, but had become a part of him now. It was woven into his consciousness, ready to light the way in the labyrinth of his dreams. It had transformed into a beacon that would guide him through the unknown territories of his dreams. And so, in the stillness of the night, under the cloak of darkness, amidst the ticking of the clock and the anticipation of dreams yet to be dreamt, I imparted a nugget of wisdom so profound it could only be appreciated in the dead of night. With a sage-like seriousness, I whispered, "I have some spray for the knotty hair on your back." We were together in a dim room, shadows cast by the lone desk lamp. The scent of old books and dried ink lingered in the thickness of the air, a reminder of the stories birthed within these walls. The atmosphere was intoxicating, reminiscent of well-aged bourbon. An unusual setting for such a peculiar conversation, but our bond had always been unconventional. The silence that ensued was as profound as the darkness outside, stretching on endlessly, ensnaring us in intense anticipation. The occasional tick of a clock and the whisper of our breathing were the only audible sounds in the otherwise silent room. Each tick of the second hand elevated the tension. In the insufficient glow, I squinted to his reaction. His figure was shrouded in shadows, a chiaroscuro reflecting the whirl of his emotions. I watched his furrowed brows relax, his narrowed eyes deep in thought, his fingers rhythmically drumming on an armrest. His deep contemplation was evident. The dim light accented his silhouette, highlighting his face's sharp angles. His typically cheerful demeanor was now contemplative, lips parted as if to question my statement. His eyes held a flicker of uncertainty, questioning my words' validity, but also a hint of amusement, revealing his seldom-seen playful side. The silence was eerie, amplifying my heartbeat. The room felt akin to a theater, a silent drama unfolding. My words hung like an enigma, awaiting resolution. His head turned my way, the light painting him ethereal. His hair, an onyx halo, was tousled from his nervous habit of running his fingers through it. His usually warm eyes now held a mix of curiosity and amusement. The tension gradually melted into relief as he broke the silence. His voice, underused and gruff, filled the room with familiarity. His reaction was a blend of confusion, amusement, and intrigue. "You're talking shit," he said, feigning annoyance. The light-hearted undertones in his voice dissolved the residual tension. His words, though harsh, held undertones of mirth, eliciting a soft chuckle from me. The intense moment had passed, replaced by our comforting camaraderie. Indignant, I rallied my defenses, ready to argue the necessity and utility of back hairspray. I bristled at his audacity, his blatant disregard for the essence of my nocturnal wisdom. With my heart pounding in my chest, I prepared to defend my position. I armed myself with facts, antidotes, and a fiery belief in the importance of back hairspray. Each fact felt like an armor, each antidote a shield, and my belief my sword. How dare he? I thought, my mind filled with indignation. I questioned the audacity of this man to question my wisdom. Was he not aware of the power of nocturnal knowledge, the depth of understanding it brought? The audacity of his stance was rivaled only by its ignorance. I felt a surge of righteous anger filling me, fueling me, readying me for the heated discussion that was about to ensue. His audacity had lit a fire within me, a fire that would not be quenched until I had made my point. He had dared to challenge my wisdom, my insight. He thought he knew better, believed he had the right to question my understanding. A sense of irritation washed over me, mixed with a dash of disbelief. Could he really be so arrogant, so blind to the potential benefits of back hairspray? I began to question his ability to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper implications. We stood on opposite ends of the battlefield, so to speak, our positions as different as night and day. I was fueled by my fervent belief, my unwavering faith in the necessity of back hairspray. He, on the other hand, stood obstinately on his ground, armed only with disregard for my wisdom. I felt a spark of defiance, a determination to prove him wrong. The tension between us was palpable, the air almost crackling with the energy of our disagreement. I could see the conviction in his eyes, mirrored, I'm sure, by my own. There was an undeniable spark between us, a clash of opinions that threatened to ignite the air around us. The quiet night was filled with the echoes of our disagreement, words filled with passion and determination. Our words flew back and forth, a fierce exchange of beliefs, of ideas. It was no longer just about back hairspray, it was about respect, about acknowledgement, about understanding. Each word, each argument, each counter-argument was about standing up for what we believed in, about defending our positions with all our might. The night air was charged, suffused with the energy of our disagreement. It was as if the universe itself was bearing witness to our debate, the stars themselves seeming to pulse in time with our words. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation, with the unknown outcome of our argument. We were in the middle of a battle, a war of words and beliefs. Despite the intensity of our disagreement, it was of us was willing to compromise. The stakes were too high, the belief too strong. We would fight until the end, until one of us emerged victorious. This belief fueled my determination, my will to continue the argument, to stand my ground. The night was ours, and we would use it to defend our beliefs. The quiet night was our battlefield, the stars our silent audience. Each word we spoke, each argument we made, echoed in the vast emptiness of the night. It was a testament to our conviction, our unwavering belief in our respective positions. In the end, the argument was just as heated as the night was quiet. It was a clash of wills, a battle of beliefs. And yet, despite the intensity, there was a sense of respect, of mutual understanding. After all, it takes a certain kind of courage to stand up for what you believe in, to defend your position, even in the face of opposition. The argument that ensued was passionate, each of us standing our ground, the night air charged with the electricity of our debate. It was an unforgettable night, a testament to the power of belief and the strength of conviction. But then something unexpected happened. The sound that erupted from him was not one I was anticipating. It emerged as a guttural chuckle before turning into a resonant wave of laughter, deep, rumbling, and seemingly never-ending. It was like a spontaneous burst of thunder, echoing through the room, bouncing off the cold walls, the low ceiling, and even our tense bodies. It created a vibrational frequency, a palpable energy that felt so tangible that it seemed to cause the very air around us to vibrate. His eyes were tightly shut, his head was thrown back, and his broad shoulders were shaking violently. He was enjoying his own amusement so much that his body was moving with the intensity of it. It was a startling sight, so out of place in our current setting that it seemed to freeze time. I found myself involuntarily halting my verbal onslaught. This laughter of his, it was so unexpected, so jarring, especially during a high-stakes confrontation. It was like a loud, discordant note being played in the otherwise silent symphony of the night. I stopped, confused and a little disoriented, my words hanging in mid-air like abandoned musical notes of a paused song. The argument I thought was so solid, so irrefutable, suddenly seemed shaky and unsure. The conviction that had been fueling my words evaporated, replaced by a creeping sense of doubt and uncertainty. It was infectious. It was hearty, boisterous, almost too loud. And yet, it felt so inappropriate given the serious nature of our discussion. The sight of him standing there, his face flushed with laughter, sent a wave of confusion washing over me. I found his mirth inexplicable, and it disoriented me, leaving me momentarily unbalanced. His laughter lingered in the room, filling it with a peculiar unease. His chest rose and fell in heavy heaves, his hand clutching his belly as he tried to contain his amusement. The room seemed to vibrate along with his laughter, the sound waves creating a strange rhythmic pattern that was both disconcerting and fascinating. In my bewildered state, a new sensation washed over me. It was as if I had been jolted awake from a deep sleep. His laughter abruptly ceased, replaced by a serene calmness. He looked at me, his eyes sparkling with a strange clarity, his lips pulled into a knowing smile. His words pierced through my confusion, his revelation searing through my mind like a heated blade, revealing the truth I had been oblivious to. Suddenly everything fell into place. The room, his laughter, my argument, all the pieces of the puzzle clicked together, fitting perfectly into the grand picture. I felt my heart pound in my chest as the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been dreaming. The messy hair, the dampness of the spray on my skin, the fiery argument I thought was real, all nothing more than figments of my overactive imagination. The realization hit me like a bucket of cold water, and soon I was laughing too. The laughter tore through the silence of the night, echoed through the trees, and spread across the open field. It was an intense, heartfelt laughter, the kind that originates in the pit of your stomach and travels up, demanding to be released. It was a laughter that was born from the depths of my being and bubbled to the surface, transforming the tranquil night into a symphony of joy. The night was a typical summer's night, blanketed by the expansive inky void dotted with countless stars. Each star was a tiny beacon twinkling with its own secret, adding to the beauty of the night. The night sky was a living canvas painted by the universe. The crickets in the distance provided a rhythmic background to our joyous moment. Their chirping was like music, a symphony of nature that added a certain depth to our unexpected hilarity. We were sitting in the middle of an open field, the soft grass beneath us, the vast starlit sky above us. A gentle breeze was blowing, rustling the leaves of the trees nearby, adding to the melody of the crickets. We laughed until our sides ached, our laughter echoing through the night. The warmth of our shared laughter, the intimacy of our shared amusement wrapped us in a cocoon of happiness. It was the kind of laughter that works your muscles, the kind that leaves you breathless. It was pure, unadulterated joy, the kind that leaves you gasping for air, your sides stitched with its intensity. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on us. We were in the middle of the night, a seemingly normal night transformed into a moment of shared joy. We were laughing over a dream that wasn't grand or ambitious but simple and trivial. It was a dream about his back hair, a detail so insignificant that it was funny. And yet it had triggered this cascade of hysteria, this explosion of laughter. The earnestness of my dream-induced concern for his back hair was also part of the comedy. Idea that in the realm of dreams where anything was possible, I had chosen to worry about his back hair was both humorous and endearing. Hidden under layers of clothing, his back hair now became the star of a dream, a protagonist in the comedy we were living. This thought made me laugh even harder, The laughter was infectious, spreading from me to him, then back to me. It seemed to be a wildfire, consuming everything in its path, leaving only joy in its wake. The world around us seemed to match our laughter. The stars twinkled brighter, the crickets chirped louder, as if they too were joining our laughter. The world was our audience, and we were putting on a show of laughter and joy. Slowly, the laughter subsided. Our sides were aching, our eyes watering, but we were smiling. We wore smiles that were genuine, the kind that reach your eyes and light up your entire face. We were basking in the afterglow of laughter, a sense of warmth and camaraderie enveloping us. Tears of laughter streamed down our faces, a testament to the joy we had experienced. The laughter had been a catharsis, a release of pent-up emotions. It was a shared experience that had brought us closer. It was a simple moment, but it held a profound significance, a moment of shared laughter in the middle of the night, a moment that would be etched in our memories forever. As our laughter died down, replaced by the comfortable silence of the night, I found myself sinking into the soft embrace of the darkness. The feeling was a comforting one, reminiscent of a warm, familiar cocoon wrapping itself around me. It felt as if the tranquility of the night had enveloped me, acting like a shield that protected the rest of the world. The silence, so profound, was punctuated only by the rhythm of my own heartbeat and the distant hoo of an owl. I lifted my gaze to the inky expanse of the night sky and was instantly struck by a sense of awe. The stars, scattered across the sky with no discernible order, served as tiny beacons of light piercing through the darkness. Each point of light was distant, unreachable, but there was something soothing about them. Each one was a constant, a reassuring presence that remained unfaltering, unhindered by the chaos of the world beneath. It was in moments like these, cradled in the silence of that, my mind was free to wander. My thoughts would flit from subject to subject, as unpredictable and random as the flight path of a butterfly. Sometimes I found myself lost in introspection, contemplating my life, the choices I had made, and the paths I had chosen. At other times, it was the small, seemingly insignificant things that captured my attention: the sound of the wind whispering through the trees, the smell of the earth after a fresh rain shower. Tonight, however, my thoughts were absorbed by a single nagging problem. It was an issue that had been plaguing me for a while now, a complex web of confusion that I couldn't seem to untangle. It was akin to a stubborn knot in my hair, one that refused to loosen, no matter how much I tugged and pulled at it. I had believed that I had stumbled upon the solution, a gleaming key that would unlock this perplexing puzzle. I had been so sure of it, so convinced that I had deciphered the code. The feeling of elation was still fresh in my memory, a wellspring of hope and anticipation that had surged within me. I had envisioned the moment of revelation, the precise instant when the answer would dawn upon me. I had imagined myself standing majestically at the peak of a towering mountain, the entire world unfurling beneath me in all its grandeur. It would be a moment of triumph, a symbol of my tenacity and resilience. However, as I sat there, embraced by the silence of the night, I came to a harsh realization. The solution I thought I had unearthed was not the answer I'd been seeking. It was a mirage, a figment of my overstretched imagination that had vanished as soon as I had reached out to touch it. A twinge of disappointment washed over me, a bitter sting that left a trace in my heart. It was a tough reality to accept, the fact that I had been chasing a phantom. I had lost myself in a labyrinth of confusion, wandering aimlessly in search of an answer that did not exist. Yet as the silence of the night cradled me, I discovered a peculiar sense of serenity. The disappointment lingered, a dull ache echoing in the recesses of my mind. However, there was also an understanding, a quiet acceptance that not all problems come with clear-cut solutions. Here I thought I had discovered the solution to a problem as tangled as the hair it was meant to address. But alas, it was not to be. In the end, the horror genre had nothing on the bizarre tales our minds could conjure in the dead of night. The stories we fabricated under the veil of darkness were far more intimidating and spine-chilling than anything a horror writer or filmmaker might endeavor to create. It seemed utterly irrelevant if we were discussing the blood-curdling screams echoing from a haunted mansion, or merely the eerie whispers that waltzed in the midnight breeze. The hair-raising trepidation, the kind that makes you compulsively glance over your shoulder, second-guessing your every move, felt insignificant in comparison to the nerve-wracking narratives spun by our subconscious minds. The nocturnal setting, perfectly orchestrated with the occasional hooting of an owl or the faint rustling of leaves, served as the ideal backdrop for these tales to unfold. Our minds, unchained from the restricting confines of reality, wove stories far more alarming than any written by authors such as Stephen King or depicted in Hitchcock's renowned films. These were tales that twisted and contorted, their trajectory as unpredictable as they were terrifying. Each one of us, within the enigmatic landscape of our minds, had gradually morphed into the author of our personal anthology of horror. These tales didn't require the act of writing, for they were indelibly etched onto the canvas of our deepest fears, insecurities, and anxieties. These were not mere stories that relied on gratuitous scares, but narratives that plunged into the dark caverns of our inner psyche, places we fervently sought to conceal from the world. However, as the night matured, a surprising transformation occurred. The once paralyzing fear began to recede, supplanted by a peculiar sense of togetherness. We discovered comfort in this shared experience, the revelation that our fears were not a solitary burden. As we exchanged our darkest thoughts and most horrifying nightmares, we found solace. A shared understanding that despite our divergent stories, we were united by a common thread of humanity and vulnerability. An unspoken consensus prevailed. These stories were not meant for analysis or understanding. They were not mirrors reflecting our identities or beliefs. They were a testament to the boundless reaches of our imagination when left unchecked. This was not solely about fear or terror. It was about the potency of storytelling, the ability to craft worlds, characters, and scenarios that were as tangible as they were imaginary. The startling realization that we hold the power to frighten ourselves more effectively than any movie, book, or video game ever could. The most remarkable part of the night, the part that indelibly imprinted our memories, was the laughter. The shared, genuine, heartfelt laughter that reverberated through the still house, bouncing off the walls and infusing each room with warmth. That was born out of the understanding that we had confronted our fears, and yet we were unscathed. The best stories I found were not the ones that left you sleepless, but the ones that were reminisced with laughter the next day. Stories that metamorphosed fear into mirth, that transformed terrifying nightmares into shared anecdotes. The narratives that, despite their macabre themes, somehow managed to bring people closer together. As we succumbed back into sleep's comforting embrace, a realization dawned upon me. Sometimes the best stories are the ones we laugh about together, in those quiet moments when the world retreats, making way for dreams.
Once upon a suburban nightmare, our protagonist, Lexi, found herself in a pickle that was both peculiar and, let's face it, sitcom-worthy. This was not your average run-of-the-mill suburban setting where the only thing that breaks the serenity is the occasional lawnmower buzzing or a dog's distant bark. No, this was a suburban labyrinth filled with twists and turns that would turn any ordinary person's life upside down. In this labyrinth lived Lexi, an intelligent and witty teenager, her heart as vast as the cosmos, her imagination as wide as the skies. But the situation she found herself in was nothing less than a screenplay for a sitcom. It was an odd, even absurd predicament that would make an audience roar with laughter while simultaneously scratching their heads in bewilderment. Lexi, who was just 16, was on the cusp of adulthood, an age where the world should be a playground, full of fleeting worries like the next homework assignment or the perfect Instagram filter. The age where your biggest enemy should be the ticking clock, slowly eating away your carefree teenage years. The age where every new corner turned should be an adventure waiting to unfold, not a storm brewing on the horizon. Her life, however, was no ordinary teenage fantasy. It was far from the idyllic dreams of prom nights and first crushes. Instead, it was a saga filled with complexities and anomalies, a series of inexplicable events that were as they were bizarre. Among the many peculiarities that Lexi had to navigate was a hormonal hurricane named Misty. Misty wasn't just a storm, she was a cataclysm. an inexplicable force of nature that swept through Lexi's life, leaving no corner untouched, no stone unturned. Misty was the personification of Lexi's teenage angst, a whirlwind of emotions that had no semblance of control or predictability. She was the tempest in Lexi's otherwise calm sea, the sudden gust of wind that toppled the equilibrium of her life. Every interaction with Misty was like walking on a tightrope, a delicate dance between maintaining control and succumbing to the chaos. The hurricane didn't come with a warning sign. It didn't gradually build up like a coming storm. Instead, it arrived out of nowhere, like a bolt of lightning, catching Lexi off guard and throwing her life into disarray. Just when Lexi thought she had a grasp on her teenage life and its challenges, Misty swooped in, turning everything upside down. Lexi found herself in the eye of the hurricane, struggling to keep afloat amidst the whirlwind of emotions and unforeseen challenges. She was caught smack in the middle of a hormonal monsoon, a natural disaster she was ill-prepared for. But in the midst of the chaos, Lexi remained resilient. She held on to the hope that the storm would pass, that the winds would die down and the clouds would clear. She believed that in the end, she would emerge stronger, braver, ready to face whatever the universe had in store for her. At the ripe age of 16, when the biggest worries should be about homework and what filter to use on Instagram, Lexi was navigating a hormonal hurricane named Misty. Misty, her pregnant stepsister, had transformed from a once close ally in the trenches of teenagehood to a walking, talking, crying mood swing. But this wasn't just any ordinary change. This was like a metamorphosis of the most drastic kind. It was hard to believe that this was the same Misty, the same sister who used to giggle with her over silly jokes and shared secrets under the warm summer night sky. The Misty she once knew was a beacon of hope and spirit while navigating the rocky path of adolescence. They shared dreams and aspirations, whispered late into the night about their plans for the future, their hopes of breaking free from the shackles of their small town. They were not just sisters, but comrades, partners in crime, sharing and enduring the same trials and tribulations. But now, everything had changed. With pregnancy had come a storm of hormones that took Misty on a roller coaster of feelings, from thrilled to terrified, from elated to melancholic in the blink of an eye. From a vibrant, lively soul, Misty had turned into an unpredictable, emotional whirlwind that left everyone around her in a perpetual state of unease. And it wasn't just the mood swings that were challenging, it was the way they manifested. One moment, Misty was her old self, laughing, joking, reminiscing about the good old days. And the next, she would be a walking tempest, her mood as volatile as a stormy sea. It was like living with a ticking time bomb, never knowing when the explosion might come. These changes had started to bleed into every aspect of their lives, from the most mundane tasks to some of events. Even a simple trip to the mall, something they used to enjoy together, had now turned into a roller coaster of emotions. It was a reality TV show in its own right, minus the commercial breaks and the chance to win a car. One minute, they would be strolling through the mall, the aroma of fresh cinnamon buns wafting through the air, the crowd buzzing around them. There would be laughter and excitement, the thrill of finding the perfect pair of shoes, or the joy of biting into a soft, warm pretzel. But the next minute, it could all change. Maybe it was the sight of a cute baby onesie, or perhaps it was a song playing in the background that reminded Misty of something. Whatever it was, it could trigger a wave of emotions in her, changing the entire atmosphere in an instant. Suddenly, what was once a fun day out could turn into a weary emotional ordeal, a spectacle for passers-by to gawk at. Despite all this, there was an undercurrent of love and understanding. It was time, no doubt, but it was also a unique journey they were navigating together. It was the roadmap of a new life waiting to be brought into the world, a life they would both cherish and love. And through all the chaos and the emotional hurdles, that thought brought a sense of hope, a light at the end of the turbulent tunnel. And so, in this new reality of theirs, Misty had transformed. From a once close ally in the trenches of teenagehood to a walking, talking, crying mood swing, the kind that could turn a simple trip to the mall into an episode of a reality TV show, minus the commercial breaks and the chance to win a car. Lexi, in a bid for normalcy, tried to be the understanding stepsister. Ever since their parents had decided to blend their lives together, it had become an unspoken obligation for her to build this bond. She was the elder one, the one who's supposed to set an example. She had been the only child in her family, a position that had always been filled with solitude and silence. This sudden inclusion of Misty, an entirely new figure in her life, was a development she was still grappling with. Lexi, stuck in the whirlwind of adolescence, found herself torn between being a good stepsister and wallowing in her own teenage angst. But she realized that the complexity of the situation was beyond her own feelings. So, with a determined spirit, she decided to embrace the role of a guiding figure, a beacon of wisdom for Misty to look up to. She began by accompanying Misty during her sleepless nights, providing a comforting presence that eased the loneliness that often comes with darkness. She listened to Misty's rants, her fears of being a young mother, her trepidations about the future. Lexi became the one person Misty could lean on, the one who didn't judge, the one who just listened. She offered her shoulders to cry on, becoming the rock that weathered the storm of Misty's fears and uncertainties. They shared moments, secrets, and yes, even fries. To most people, sharing fries might seem like an insignificant gesture, but for Lexi, it was a monumental step. It was a moment where she shared a part of her world with Misty, a part that she usually kept guarded. In the world of teenagers, sharing fries was like the exchange of trust, an unspoken pact that symbolized their strengthening bond. All these efforts from Lexi were not just to create a peaceful environment at home, but also to ensure that Misty knew she was not alone. As the weeks passed, Lexi saw Misty transform. Her once petite figure was now marked by the curves of pregnancy, and along with her physical changes, her emotional spectrum also saw a shift. The juvenile, carefree girl transitioned into a young woman, a soon-to-be mother, who experienced a whirlwind of emotions. From ecstatic moments of feeling the baby kick to the apocalyptic fears of childbirth, Misty's emotional journey was a roller coaster ride. Lexi observed all this from the sideline, providing a steady, calming influence. It was a challenging task, but she took it in her stride. She understood that this was not just about being a good stepsister, but also about growing up, about realizing the realities of life. The journey they embarked on was not easy, but the camaraderie they shared, the bond they built, made it bearable. But as Misty's pregnancy advanced, so did her emotional range, from ecstatic to apocalyptic in 0 to 60. Lexi found herself navigating through these uncharted territories, holding her hand, helping her through the storm. She was there, always, the understanding stepsister, the rock, the beacon of hope amidst the chaos. In her quest for normalcy, she had grown up, become wiser, and most importantly, had become a confidant for Misty. The final straw came when Lexi's attempt to enjoy a dressing room montage, a teen rite of passage, turned into a teary disaster. It was one of those moments that are etched in your memory forever, the kind that plays out like a scene from a movie. Only this time, it was Lexi's life. She had been looking forward to this trip and had been incessantly browsing through fashion magazines, planning her outfits meticulously. The excitement bubbling in her was like a fizzy drink, ready to overflow at any given moment. She had decided to shop at her favorite boutique, a haven of the latest trends and cutting-edge fashion, nestled between the hustle and bustle of downtown's busiest street. The anticipation of stepping into the dressing room with arms full of clothes, the thrill of seeing herself in new outfits, it was such a dream for her. The dressing room, with its soft, flattering lights and large mirrors, should have been a sanctuary for her. Yet, on that day, it morphed into a battlefield. And then, there was Misty. Pregnant and glowing, she had set aside her own discomfort and had decided to accompany Lexi, her radiant to the general air of excitement. Misty, who had once been a fashionista herself, was now navigating the tricky terrains of maternity wear. It was the stark contrast between her pre-pregnancy fashion-forward self and her current swollen state that had set a bittersweet tone to the day. As Lexi tried on outfit after outfit, each hideous than the last in her eyes, the tidal wave of insecurity crashed over her. She was overwhelmed by the harsh fluorescent lights, the harsher reality of her changing body, and the critical gaze of her own reflection. The montage she had fantasized about, thinking it would be like those fun, fast-forwarded scenes in teenage movies, was turning into a nightmare. On the other side of the dressing room door, Misty was fighting her own battle. The clothes she used to love, that shouted chic and style, now seemed like cruel reminders of her past. The reality dawned upon her that pregnancy and fashion-forward dressing rooms were mortal enemies. The truth was a hard pill to swallow, and the realization brought with it a torrent of emotions. Unshed tears welled up in her eyes, and soon the dam of self-restraint broke, cascading down her cheeks. It was a poignant moment, like a scene ripped straight from a drama film. Only this time, it was Misty's life. The radiant smile faded, replaced by a sadness that was as real as the growing life inside her. The somberness of the situation was not lost on Lexi. She was quick to react, her instincts kicking in, much like an emergency responder would. She quickly bundled up the clothes that lay strewn around, attempting to restore some normalcy, and called for immediate evacuation. The request wasn't of a panicked teenager, rather an SOS from a daughter who wanted to shield her mother from any more pain. Her knight in shining armor came in the form of her father, who swiftly responded to his daughter's call, adding a new role to his repertoire, the dad Uber. Lexi, in a move that would make any emergency responder proud, called for immediate evacuation courtesy of Dad Uber. Exhausted, Lexi suggested a timeout. It was a day like any other Tuesday, an unassuming midway through the weekly grind. This was a day that should have been filled with the typical humdrum, but the tension had been building, seeming to seep into every corner of the house, coloring every interaction with the dark hues of frustration. Lexi, the youngest of 3 siblings, had spent the day in a whirl of schoolwork, after-school activities, and the general chaos that comes with being a teenager. The evening came faster than anticipated. Lexi found herself at the dinner table, a battlefield with knives and forks instead of guns and bullets. The tension was palpable, a foggy haze that filled the room, choking the air. Her mother, a stern woman with sharp eyes, was on one side of the table, slicing through her steak with precision. Her father, a quiet man with a thoughtful demeanor, was on the other, lost in the contents of his plate. Lexi's suggestion of a timeout was a plea for a ceasefire. It was a desperate attempt to bring some semblance of peace to the dinner table. A timeout, she thought, could be a breather, a moment of calm in the storm that had been brewing. It was a concept that was so simple and yet so profound. It was a pause, a break, a respite from the relentless bickering and fighting that had become their family's norm. To her parents, however, the idea of a timeout seemed as foreign as the concept of a peaceful family dinner. They looked at her as though she had uttered words in a foreign language, words that were alien and incomprehensible to them. They saw the world in black and white, in absolutes, with no room for gray areas. To them, discussions were wars to be won, with no room for ceasefires. But Lexi, she saw things differently. She yearned for understanding, for empathy, for compassion. She craved for those stolen moments of peace where love was not a battlefield but a sanctuary. She longed for a family dinner that was filled with laughter and stories instead of arguments and accusations. Be more understanding, they preached, a mantra that her parents continuously repeated. It was a phrase that was often thrown around, a demand that was made without any genuine intention of understanding. It was a mantra that was quickly wearing thin. Lexi yearned for more than just words. She yearned for actions, for tangible proof of understanding, for a demonstration of empathy. They preached understanding, but their actions said otherwise. Lexi was left to grapple with this contradiction, this dichotomy between words and actions. She was left yearning for understanding, craving for empathy, and longing for peace. She was caught in the middle, a soldier fighting a war she didn't want, a child craving for a family dinner that was peaceful and filled with love. Exhausted, Lexi suggested a timeout, a concept that seemed as foreign to her parents as the idea of a peaceful family dinner. Be more understanding, they preached, a mantra that was quickly wearing thin. Then came the birthday party fiasco. It was a day etched in Misty and Lexi's friendship as indelible as any scar. An invite, exclusive as a VIP ticket to Coachella, arrived in Lexi's mailbox. This wasn't just an ordinary birthday gathering. It was an event that only the most influential among their peers would be attending. A secretive affair, the details whispered in hushed reverence, and the invitation was as exclusive as they came. The event was to be held in a sprawling mansion, with its opulence designed to awe and impress. The guest list was a who's who of the city's elite, the creme de la creme of their high school, and the air was thick with anticipation. It was the sort of event that could seal someone's social status for the foreseeable future. The invitation was like a golden ticket, a coveted pass to the world's most exclusive concert. Everything about the party screamed exclusivity. The drinks would be the finest, the food would be gourmet, and the music would be provided by a well-known local band. In a word, it promised to be legendary. For Lexi, used to being on the fringes of the popular crowd, this was an opportunity to move up in the world, a chance to cement her place among the socialites. On the other side of the equation was Misty. Misty, with her wide-eyed innocence and her heart as big as the moon. Misty, who was Lexi's best friend, her confidant, her partner in crime. Misty, who wasn't invited to the party, who was not considered to be part of the popular crowd, to be included so desperately. When Misty heard about the party, she felt a pang of longing so strong it was like a physical blow. She begged Lexi to take her along, tried to appeal to their friendship, their shared history. Her tearful plea was a testament to her desperation, her desire to belong. She pleaded with Lexi, her eyes filled with tears, her voice choked with emotion. Lexi was torn. On one hand, she had the golden opportunity to ascend the social ladder, to rub shoulders with the elite. On the other hand, there was Misty, her friend, her best friend, the one who'd always been there for her, the one who she knew she would miss terribly in the throes of the party. The conversation was an emotional battleground. It was a fight between loyalty and ambition, between friendship and popularity, between past and future. It was a battle between two friends who loved each other deeply, yet found themselves on different paths. Misty's plea to tag along was the equivalent of asking Lexi to bring a newborn to a rave. It was unrealistic. It was impractical. It was a request that could shatter their friendship, strain it to its breaking point. But it was heartbreaking all the same. It was a plea that showed just how much Misty wanted to be accepted, to be included, and just how much Lexi wanted to protect her friend, even if it meant sacrificing her own desires. In a moment of teenage defiance, Lexi played her trump card, threatening to relocate to her cousins, a place where the most dramatic event was the cat knocking over a vase. This decision wasn't spontaneous, nor was it taken lightly. It was the culmination of a series of events that had pushed Lexi to her breaking point. It all started with the typical parental pressures and avalanche of expectations that Lexi's free-spirited nature found increasingly difficult to shoulder. The school grades were just the tipping point. Lexi was creative, intelligent, but not academically inclined. Her parents, both alumni of Ivy League schools, found it hard to comprehend. They saw Lexi's potential, and they wanted her to pursue an academic path. Household arguments were a common occurrence. Voices would rise, doors would slam, and Lexi would retreat into the sanctity of her room, her sanctuary where she could be herself. It was a space filled with sketches, music, and dreams that defied the conventional framework of success her parents imposed. Her cousin's house, in stark contrast, was a haven of tranquility, a place where the mundane was celebrated, where a cat knocking over a vase was the height of drama. Lexi envied the serenity her cousin enjoyed, a world away from the pressure cooker environment of her own home. The day she made the threat to leave was a turning point. That evening had started with yet another report card, glowing with C's instead of the A's her parents desired. The dining table became a battlefield, the air dense with disappointment and regret. Each word spoken was a barbed wire, every sentence a declaration of war. Threatening to leave was Lexi's last stand, her desperate attempt to regain control over her life. Her cousin's place seemed like a refuge, a sanctuary where she could be herself without judgment, without the relentless pursuit of success. Her parents, stunned into silence, could only stare at their defiant daughter. Lexi stood her ground, her eyes determined defiance, yet glistening with unshed tears. The room was heavy with unsaid words, with the enormity of the situation. Her threat echoed in the room, a closely held secret no longer hidden. In the following days, the tension was palpable. Every interaction was careful, each word measured. Her parents were grappling with the reality of their daughter's threat. Lexi, on the other hand, found herself in a strange limbo. Her threat had been uttered in a moment of anger, but the more she thought about it, the more it started to make sense. The fallout was nuclear. Accusations flew, tears flowed, and the household tension could cut through a birthday cake. Each family member was trying to navigate this new dynamic, caught in an emotional storm that had no sign of dissipating. This was the aftermath of Lexi's desperate cry for freedom, a moment etched in the fabric of their family dynamic, altering it forever. Misty retreated to her room, transforming it into her personal fortress of solitude, an impenetrable cocoon where she could shut out the rest of the world. It had been a tumultuous few days, marked by escalating tension between her and Lexi. As these two previously inseparable souls slowly drifted apart, they had erected invisible barriers, shutting themselves in their own worlds, unapproachable, aloof, and guarded. All the while, Lexi's parents, normally doting, loving, and ever-present, had resorted to giving her the silent treatment, a punishment that was only slightly less severe than revoking Wi-Fi privileges. They were a technologically savvy family, so this was their version of the unbearable dread isolation. It was a profound kind of silence, not the comforting quiet that patently waits for the right words, but a silence that screamed of latent resentment and disappointment. It was a silence that hung heavy in the air, like a thick fog that blurs the vision, stifling and suffocating. In the aftermath of the emotional storm, Lexi found herself wandering the wreckage of her once peaceful life. She surveyed the debris of shattered dreams, the broken shards of trust, and the remains of their once harmonious relationship. She began to question herself in the solitude of her room. Was she the antagonist in this dizzying, hormone-fueled drama that was her life? Or was she merely a teenager, pushed to her breaking point, teetering on the edge, struggling to keep her balance in the tumultuous tempest of adolescence? As the days passed, the silence grew heavier, pressing down on her, forcing her to confront her feelings. The walls of her room echoed with unspoken words and unshed tears, reverberating with the deafening silence that the void left by their last argument. In the stillness, Lexi began to introspect. She realized that perhaps, just perhaps, her escape plan was a tad dramatic. Perhaps in the heat of the moment, she had allowed her emotions to sweep her away, causing her to act impulsively. Misty, despite being a mobile emotional roller coaster, was still her stepsister, someone who had shared secrets and dreams with her. They had confided in each other, sought solace in each other's company, and had together navigated the treacherous waters of adolescence. They had shared laughter and tears, triumphs and failures, joy and sorrow. On one particularly memorable occasion, they had attempted experiment with homemade hair dye. It was a memory that still brought a smile to her face, a reminder of their shared past, and the fact that, in spite of everything, they were still family. In a twist worthy of a daytime TV special, Lexi extended an olive branch, a peace offering in the form of a shared tub of ice cream and a marathon of their favorite sitcom. She could only hope that this gesture would serve to mend the rift between them, to bridge the gaping chasm that had opened up in the wake of their argument, and eventually bring some semblance of normality back into their lives. Once upon a weekend in London, our protagonist, a 28-year-old travel enthusiast named Alex, embarked on an adventure that promised the allure of history, a taste of the city's heritage, and the affordability of budget accommodation. In his backpack were his hopes and dreams, his wanderlust as his compass, seeking to explore the city's rustic charm and urban vibe. The English capital, with its grandeur and thriving cultural diversity, was a magnet that had drawn him from his quiet life in the suburbs of Birmingham. Alex, an introvert by nature and a history fanatic by passion, had always been fascinated by the grand narratives that the City of London boasted. Its royal history, age-old architecture, captivating museums, and the charm that resonated with its cobblestone streets. He was eager to soak in the aura of the city, inhale its scent, and engrave the essence of his journey in his heart. But little did he know, the real adventure lay not in the city's charm, but in the comedy of errors that awaited within the hotel's dubious walls. The hotel, boasting of its history and budget-friendly prices, had seemed like the perfect choice for Alex. The evening had started innocently enough, with Alex returning after a day of sightseeing, walking through the famous Tower Bridge, exploring the iconic British Museum, and witnessing the grandeur of the Buckingham Palace. He was exhausted, yet exhilarated. The hotel room, with its Victorian-era decor and a promise of comfort, beckoned him to rest his weary bones. The idea of a hot shower and the sweet embrace of Wi-Fi seemed like heaven to his tired body and mind. However, fate had different plans. Our hero, in an unexpected twist of events, ended up locking himself out of his room. It was a moment of unprecedented forgetfulness that even Alex, usually meticulous and careful, found hard to believe. Leaving the room key inside the locked room resonated with a burst of laughter, were it not for his current predicament. Standing in the hallway, clad only in a shirt and boxers, Alex faced a dilemma that would not only test his wits, but also his patience. Penning a scene that might make even Sherlock Holmes pause, Alex realized his plight was as unpredictable as it was funny. His predicament seemed like a scene straight out of a sitcom, a farce of errors that would become a tale he would recount with laughter and chagrin. The hotel, devoid of staff and with an emergency number as responsive as a statue, seemed to mock Alex's plight. Perhaps, he thought, this was the adventure he was unknowingly seeking, a hilarious debacle in the heart of London. The hotel, in all its late-night silence, echoed his thoughts and amplified the gravity of his situation. The reception area, with its uncomfortable chairs and an ambiance that reminded him of a waiting room in purgatory, loomed as the only refuge. The once inviting lobby now seemed more like a trial he had to endure. He was a traveler stranded not in a foreign land, but in the confines of an impersonal hotel lobby. He now faced a night filled with uncertainty, adding a layer of unexpected comic drama to his weekend adventure in London. The eerie silence seemed to whisper, mocking him and his forgetfulness. Being locked out of his own room in a hotel in a city thousands of miles away from home was indeed a remarkable twist added to his journey. However, in the midst of the discomfort, Alex held on to his humor and optimism. This was, after all, a story he would someday narrate with a laugh, a story that would add color to his London adventure. This moment, as uncomfortable and frustrating as it was a testament to the unpredictability of life and the humor it occasionally threw his way. The reception area, with its uncomfortable chairs and the ambiance of a waiting room in purgatory, loomed as the only refuge. Just as despair began to take hold, a glimmer of hope appeared in the form of an unlikely hero, an Asian gentleman stepping out for a cigarette. Optimism, like the morning sun breaking through a darkened night, started to spread its warmth in the cold abyss of despair. This optimism wasn't born from thin air, but rather from the arrival of an unexpected character. A man in the midst of the bustling, indifferent crowd, who had stood out because he was different. He was not rushing to be somewhere. He was stepping out to take a break, to breathe in the tranquility of isolation in the middle of a chaotic world. His presence was like a beacon, a ray of hope piercing through the bleak darkness of hopelessness. He was just a man, an Asian gentleman stepping out from a neon-lit convenience store. There was nothing particularly extraordinary about him. His hair was neatly combed, he wore glasses, he sported a casual business suit, and in his hand was an unlit cigarette. Yet there was something about this ordinary man that made him extraordinary. Perhaps it was his calm demeanor amidst the chaos, his sense of purpose, the way he held onto his cigarette as if it was his lifeline, or just the way he looked different from the hasty crowd. Our eyes met, and for a moment, our it was as if time had stopped, and in that pause a silent conversation took place. A conversation that spoke of despair and hope, of problems and solutions, of strangers and allies. It was a moment in time where everything seemed possible, where the gloomy clouds of despair started to show a silver lining. As the Asian gentleman lit his cigarette, the orange embers glowed in the dark, like a lighthouse guiding a ship lost at sea. It was a signal, a glimmer of hope. It was a reminder that no matter how dark the night, the dawn will eventually break. And with that, our unlikely camaraderie began. Like a scene from a buddy comedy, the two strangers, now partners in an unforeseen predicament, started to brainstorm. It was thick with tension, yet it was also buzzing with the excitement of what was to come. There was laughter, there were disagreements, but above all, there was a shared sense of determination, a resolve to face the problem head-on, a resolve to not let despair take hold. The plan that emerged was as daring as it was audacious. It was a plan that required great courage and a sense of adventure. It was a plan that could go horribly wrong, but it was also a plan that, if successful, would mean the end of despair and the beginning of hope. Their solution? A daring heist involving the hotel's spare keys. These keys, a symbol of access and authority, were the last pieces of the puzzle. They were the keys to their salvation, the keys to their escape from despair. The keys, for reasons known only to the hotel's management, were conveniently located next to the computer in reception. It was a stroke of luck, or perhaps destiny, that these keys were within reach. But it was not luck that had brought the two strangers together. It was not luck that had sparked their camaraderie. It was fate. It was the universe conspiring to bring hope in the midst of despair. Just as despair began to take hold, a glimmer of hope appeared in the form of an unlikely hero. This hero, an Asian gentleman stepping out for a cigarette, became the beacon of hope. Like a scene from a buddy comedy, the two strangers brainstormed a daring plan of action. Their solution? A daring heist involving the hotel's spare keys, which, for reasons known only to the hotel's management, were conveniently located next to the computer in reception. What followed was a montage worthy of a caper film. The scene had the gravity of a heist movie, but with the lightness of a comedy, where the protagonists, Alex and the newfound accomplice, embroiled themselves in a mission of unlocking a door. The tension in the air was palpable, as if it could be cut with a knife. Their mission was simple, yet complex in its execution. They had to find the right key among a plethora of keys. each unique in its design and artistic in its presentation, symbolizing the complexity and the variety of life itself. As they tried key after key, it was like a moment frozen in time. Each failed attempt gnawed at their spirits, but their resilience mirrored that of an undying flame. The suspenseful music playing in the background gave a sense of urgency and mystery to the scene. The rhythm resonated with their heartbeat, the beats echoing their determination, the melody playing the symphony of their struggle. Each note filled the air with a sense of anticipation, bombarding the senses with excitement, anxiety, and a strange sense of thrill. The occasional comedic slip-up provided relief from the building tension. There was a cinematic beauty in the way Alex fumbled with the keys, dropping them clumsily, trying to pick them up in haste. The subtle comedic touch brought a quirky charm to the scene, a reminder that humor and grace can both exist in the face of intense situations. The laughter echoed in the room, bouncing off the walls, breaking the silence that seemed to have swallowed the place. Alex's frustration grew with each passing second. With each unsuccessful attempt, his hopes seemed to be slipping away like sand from a closed fist. The 100th key, the 200th key, the journey was turning into a marathon, a test of endurance. On the 300th attempt, or so it felt, something miraculous happened. The door clicked open, the deadbolt slid back, the lock gave way. It was a sound that was truly, undeniably sweeter than any symphony, more melodious than the most beautiful music ever composed. At that moment, relief washed over Alex. It was like the first sip of tea on a cold British morning, the taste that warms the soul and soothes the senses. The tension in his muscles eased, and the worry lines on his forehead smoothed out. His heart, which had been racing like a wild horse, now found its calming rhythm. His eyes sparkled with the triumph of victory, a silent celebration of his resilience. The ordeal was over. In the aftermath of what would come to be known as the Great Key Caper, Alex found himself awash in a sea of emotions and recollections, unable to do anything but replay the night's events over in his mind. The night was now quiet, a stark contrast to the chaotic whirlwind of unforeseen incidents that had unfolded only a few hours prior. His heart was still pounding in his chest, the adrenaline slowly subsiding and leaving him with an overwhelming feeling of exhaustion, and yet, he couldn't help but smile. The initial wave of embarrassment that had washed over him during the ordeal had been a constant companion, a persistent sensation that had clung to him like a second skin. It was a powerful embarrassment, the kind that made one wish they could disappear into the floor or slip into an alternate universe where their faux pas didn't exist. Yet, as the night drew to a close, that embarrassment seemed to be slowly giving way to something else, something far less tormenting and far more enlightening. Upon reflection, Alex began to realize something exceedingly important. Sometimes, life's most mortifying moments, the ones that make us cringe and blush, are also the ones that linger in our memories, becoming cherished stories to look back upon. These are the moments that weave the fabric of our lives, the ones that shape us and remind us of our humanity. They are the moments we laugh about years later, the moments that make us remember that life is, in fact, a series of unpredictable events. And sometimes, the heroes we need don't come clad in capes or armed with superpowers. No, sometimes they come in the form of strangers. Strangers with a knack for breaking and entering. Strangers who somehow manage to turn a potentially disastrous situation into an adventure. Strangers who remind us that we are not alone in this world. It's characters that challenge our perceptions, encourage us to see things from a different angle, and inadvertently help us to grow. As for explaining the circus of events captured on the CCTV footage, Alex considered the prospect. He wondered about how he could possibly narrate the ludicrousness of the situation, how he could make any sense of the locked-out lodgers, the impromptu key heist, and the unanticipated sleepover in the reception area. The whole scenario seemed like something out of a far-fetched movie plot. But then again, Alex thought, why not let the footage speak for itself? Why not let the images tell the viewer a story that leaves room for interpretation, a story that teases the imagination? So he decided that some stories are best left to the imagination, best left untold. After all, who would believe such a tale? Who could possibly comprehend the scope of the strange occurrences that had transpired that night? And thus, our story concludes. It doesn't end with a moral or a lesson, a neatly wrapped package of wisdom to be imparted. No, instead, it ends with a reminder. A reminder to never underestimate the importance of But this is not just a reminder for Alex, but for us all. We all have our great key capers, our mortifying moments, our unexpected heroes. And it's these experiences that remind us of the unpredictability of life, the beauty of the unexpected, and the value in every moment, no matter how seemingly insignificant. It's these experiences that teach us that sometimes the best stories are the ones we don't fully understand, and that's perfectly all right. It reminds us that not everything has to make sense to be meaningful. Never underestimate the importance of keeping